sketches of the architectural sculpture, watercolors of the monuments at Ani. And when the Republic of Armenia was invaded by Turkey and Russia, Fetvajan had to come west. When he came to Paris, the Museum of Decorative Arts of the Louvre exhibited his watercolors of Ani, and there was great praise for them. And then in London, the Victoria and Albert Museum exhibited his paintings, and the Royal Society of Architects. When he came to the United States, he had those with him. He didn't have much money at all. And there was interest on the part of Harvard to publish his sketches and his watercolors. But there weren't enough funds to do this. And by the time my godfather died, when he was 80 years old, over 80 years old, his heart was broken because this information hadn't been published. I, as a child, knew only that my godfather had done something very important for the history of Armenian art and architecture, but I didn't know the details. So suddenly the intellectual interest coincided with this emotional bond, and if I had started out to kind of fulfill my godfather's mission, I couldn't have done it in a better way, but I did it unknowingly from the other direction. But I also think that some of the problems I had to face in the Soviet Union, I was able to surmount because there was this emotional bond. When I finished the coursework, I had to go to Armenia to photograph the churches and study them, research them, do some field work. I had taken something like 60 rolls of film with me. I had 2 cameras, 4 lenses, and no experience in taking pictures. The black and white photographs were going to be developed in the Polytechnic Institute, but the color, the Soviet Union did not have the Kodak color process. Armenia didn't have it. I had asked the American embassy in Moscow, what we could do about it, and they said, well, if you were in Moscow, you would give it to us. We would send the films by diplomatic pouch outside the country to the United States, because the Soviets had a rule you could not export exposed film. And so the fact I wasn't in Moscow made me try another avenue, and that is that I used to hang around the hotels, the tourist hotels, the 2 or 3 in Yerevan. And anybody who looked American and spoke English with an American accent, I would go up to and say, I'm not a spy. I'm a graduate student from the United States. I'm doing a dissertation on art history. And, I wondered if you would be willing to carry out just 2 or 3 rolls of film to the outside. I've got them in prepaid mailers. And, invariably they were trusting. And they would take my film and they'd get back to the United States, mail it, and the pictures would get back to my house where somebody looked at them.
While her subject was mainly studied by scholars behind the Iron Curtain, the end of the Cold War opened the Armenian architectural record to scrutiny by more scholars worldwide. Dermanuelian continues her own research and fieldwork inside Armenia, since 1991 an independent republic.
This is the church of Ervart, and early 14th century, and another reason why I took up the study of Armenian architectural sculpture, because on the front of this church, over the western doorway, you've got a portrait of the Madonna and Child, and beside their portrait is John the Baptist, there at the very top, sort of perched on the arms of the cross. But then when you look further down, what you have is a lion on one side, in the base of the cross, and a bull on the other. And the question is, why in heaven's name do they have animals on the outsides of these churches? You can just see on the eastern side of this church, you've got one animal flat on his back, and the other animal above him. He's just conquered him. And then on the other side of the church, you have the same thing. And on the southern side, as you move down from the double window, you see the image of a wonderful eagle with very fancy feathers, carefully carved, but he's holding a lamb in his claws. And that's a kind of sculptural motif we find in churches all over Armenia. And it may be an image that refers to the souls of the departed being carried into heaven by Christ. So this image of the eagle and the lamb really does have to do with the Armenian view of Christianity, their focus on salvation. Over here is Sanahin Bridge, and what you find is at the very top of the steps on both sides, two lions, and just sprawled there, looking very, very relaxed. But when you get close, you see their claws are just holding on to those stone slabs. And what they're doing is guarding the roadway that goes way up to Sanahin Monastery. And so, lions in all cultures, because they're so strong and powerful, they were often considered guardian animals. The most important part of the Armenians' identity was as a Christian people. The Queen of Armenia in 966 built the main church at Sanahin Cathedral. The two princes you have there holding a church between them are her two sons. So the portrait of them holding the model of a church between them is a lesson to them and anyone who looked at the church that supporting the church was the most important thing they could do. When I was studying for my dissertation, my purpose was to